All these years, ain't a gray hair to be found. God is good. They can't hear on Facebook or YouTube? Okay. I don't know what you expect me to do about it up here on this stage, but there's a rumor going around they can't hear on Facebook or YouTube. Amen. All right. Okay. I want to get started here, and as our public officials come in, they can, we'll put them up if they don't get here too late. Trent Lott, the former senator from Mississippi, after he gave a speech in which it was replete with references to making America great again, an African-American reporter asked him, can you time, date, stamp when America was great, when it was at its greatest? Point to a time when in America's history is that greatness that you keep saying you want to return to. And he paused and he said 1955. 1955, from his perspective as a white male from Mississippi, that the 1955 iteration of America was great. But you know what happened in 1955? 14-year-old Emmett Till, visiting from his family in Chicago, went down to visit family in Mississippi, didn't know the mores of the dirty South, didn't know that a black man was, when he saw a white woman and crossing her in the street, was supposed to turn his eye gaze down and away, so that his beastly blackness did not offend her pure whiteness. That was the mores of the dirty South. And a gang of, supposedly he whistled at this woman. It was found out later he did not, and that she lied. And he ended up being drugged from family members' homes, thrown in the Tallahatchie River. After his genitalia was cut off, he was maimed, his skull was bashed in, disemboweled, and a farm tool, a weighted farm tool, took his body to the bottom of the river, to the current, caused him to wash up along some lonely riverbank. She had an open casket funeral. In December, that happened August 28th. In December of 1955, December the 1st, a 42-year-old seamstress who was the secretary of the local NAACP in Montgomery was sitting down on her seat thinking about what happened with Emmett Till, because it went all over the country. And a white man asked her to give up her seat, again, the dirty South. And that day, Rosa Parks stood up for justice by continuing to sit down. And it was the spark that hit the gasoline of legitimate discontent and caused a blaze all over this country, and Jim Crow was on his way out. But Trent Lott believed that 1955 America was America's great heyday. 1955 America. That was before the birth control pill in Roe v. Wade, when women had no control over when or if or under what circumstances they had a child. 1955 America. There was not a woman, not an African American, or a single outwardly gay person on the Supreme Court, in Congress, or in the Senate. 1955 America. When black people were still in the back of the bus in segregated America, American apartheid, de jure in the South, de facto in the North, and most of our Latinx Americans that are here today are on the other side of the Rio Grande, and gay Americans were in the closet, and Bayard Rustin couldn't even be public about the service that he put so that we could even have a March on Washington. But in the minds of Trent Lott, that America is the America they want to go back to. Project 2025 translates Trent Lott's America into a policy agenda. That's what the return to 1955 looks like. Versus a DEI America. We've heard a lot about DEI. And sometimes people throw something at you, you say, yeah, I like that. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Versus, instead of Project 2025's return to 1955 America, we want a more perfect union that celebrates diversity, pursues equity, and practices inclusion. It's called a more perfect union. So tonight, the Bible says, in all thy getting, get an understanding. And so we want to begin tonight with the first of our august and illustrious panel of guests to help us understand Project 2025, and we're going to provide the link and the QR code so that you can go read the 930-page document in full on your own. So no, we're not going to go cover to cover, but you can go online and read all 930 pages on your own. I'm about 450 pages into it. I've skimmed it now. I'm going back reading it from cover to cover. But we're going to hit some highlights and some themes. And the first to speak to us tonight is retired civil rights attorney. Before there was Johnny Cochran, there was Lem Howell, one of the architects of the Lauren Miller Bar Association. If you don't know Lem Howell, don't you say it out loud, because you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Put your hands together. Lem, would you come at this time? Now, pray for me, because I got to keep each one of these speakers to 10 minutes. And no one's more loquacious and time denying than preachers and politicians. But tonight, I'm the timer, and I'm going to give them all a 60-second warning when they hit 9 minutes. At 10 minutes, I'm going over to pull them away from the microphone. And so we don't want nobody to get escorted back to their seat tonight. Amen? So you touch your neighbor and say, pray for Reverend tonight. Let's give a hand to Lem as he comes.
Well, thank you, Reverend, and it's a pleasure to be here. And let me say, I can't say HE2 sticks, but you know what that stands for. He's one HE2 sticks of a preacher. Kamala said, we're not going back. We're not going back to 1955 or any time back. Let me say that I was asked to speak about 2025, how it impacts you. And keeping that in mind is how I'm going to start. And so we have to ask, what is it? It's a 920-page right-wing manifesto, 110 conservative organizations. They believe in the unitary executive organization. That means that they'll get rid of civil service. The FBI and the Justice Department and other agencies will be beholden to the president. And you remember how Trump was really annoyed that he couldn't stop the investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 election. And the Senate proved that there was Russian interference in the 2016 election. But that's what he wants to do, have the FBI under his thumb. So you're going to hear that term, unitary executive. So the president is king. But folks, while I'm talking about that, I can't help but remind you about a devastating case that came down, and that was Trump versus the United States. But I won't get into it, so ask me a question during the question period. I'll tell you all about it. But that's where you came up with the Chief Justice Roberts coming up with that idea of the unitary executive, meaning the president is above the law and is in charge of the executive branch of government, and all agencies are beholden to him. But I'm getting off my outline. It cost $22 million to be implemented, and it will be implemented within 180 days that a Republican becomes president. And what do they say their goal is? Quote, our goal is to assemble an army of aligned, vetted, trained, and prepared conservatives to go to work on day one to deconstruct the administrative state. You know, I think back in Reagan, they used to call it the welfare state. But it's not new. They've been doing it all along, the Heritage Foundation. Now, you will hear the former president saying he has not, number one, he doesn't know anything about it, and besides, he doesn't believe some of the crazy things. Well, if you don't know about it, how can you criticize the crazy things in it? 140 people who worked for Trump were involved in creating it, including 6 former cabinet secretaries. And I particularly want to call your attention to Jean Hamilton on the chapter on the Department of Justice, and who was a colleague of Stephen Miller. And I'm going to get back to this guy, Stephen Miller, a real Gestapo person, but more about that later. Now, the topic tonight was how it affects you. 2025, how it affects you. So, Reverend Braxton had created a nice outline. Oh, that's a picture of me. Okay. But I prepared my own outline because it's sort of, there it is. But before I get to it, I'm going to give you mine, and then I'm going to go down some of it. One, you'd abolish the Department of Education. And they specifically said in the document to abolish Head Start. All right? They would cut funding for Medicare and Medicaid. No abortion or contraception coverage over the Affordable Care Act or through the mail. And I'll get back to the it all ties together. Let me tell you just about the Comstock Act of 1873. And that prohibited pornography and abortion and anything going through the United States mail. So they want to enforce that old statute. They want to cut overtime pay, and they provide in it. They claim they didn't say they want a national abortion, like outlaw national abortion nationally. But throughout the document, they speak about abortion. For the blue states that permit abortion, they want abortion surveillance. And I already told you, no porn. They want to terminate DEI programs. You heard the minister talk about it. No more affirmative action program, no more student loans, repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. That act healthcare cap, you remember, for insulin at $35, reduce the number of people on food stamps, stop student loan forgiveness, eliminate student loans. Increase premiums on FHA loans, eliminate consent decrees. Let me talk to you a little bit about that. You know what the Justice Department did in Seattle. Jenny Durkin, when she was U.S. Attorney, and the Justice Department started a lawsuit against the Seattle Police Department for the use of excessive force. And they proved that there were certain bad actors there. And so there was a consent decree where there was court, the federal district court, Judge Robart, was administering the program. And a lot of times they didn't conform because they were still using too much force. But they under 2025 would abolish consent decrees. And, all right, that's generally. Now, that's specifically. Now I want to talk generally what it does. All right? It will do away with the civil service system. They would replace civil service workers with MAGA types after they were vetted and showed loyalty to Trump. All right? Thousands of federal jobs would be affected, including the Department of Justice, the FBI, the FCC, and the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, and the Federal Communication Commission. They would deconstruct the Department of Homeland Security, reduce environmental and climate change regulations. They would abolish, I told you that, the Department of Education. They would cut funding to Medicare and Medicaid. No contraceptives or abortion pills. Terminate DEI program. No affirmative action program. Arrest and deport illegal immigrants. They would, here's what they would do. You remember when Trump, the two things that happened in the Trump administration really was he gave us those members of the Supreme Court that did away with Roe versus Wade. The second thing is that they cut corporate taxes. I think the corporate tax rate was too high. It was about 39%. I thought it ought to go down to maybe 25%, but it went down to 21% under the statute that they passed, resulting in huge deficits. Now they want to further reduce it to 18%. 60
seconds.
What? Oh, folks, I haven't begun to talk to you.
We can do it in the Q&A.
Well, don't let me tell you, Stephen Miller, this guy. Okay, the chapter on the Justice Department is written here. The Justice Department, as you know, encompasses also the FBI. He would direct the FBI and tell them who they could investigate and not investigate. He'd use it as a weapon to go after Biden and anybody. He said he would sue Biden. So he'd use the Justice Department as his own private tool for investigation. But during the Q&A, I'll tell you about Stephen Miller and what he's done with our Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. It would turn it on its head. Thank God we had Ketanji Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court, because when she said to the other members of the court, what do you mean the Constitution is colorblind? The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were passed to help the freedmen who were slaves. And I want to get into what that will do.
We're going to get it all out in the Q&A.
I knew the first person was going to get caught in the snare. Let's give Lem Howell a great big hand. A great big hand. Come on, this is the legendary Lem Howell, who was doing breakthrough case law in this nation before anybody knew. Come on, amen. We thank God for him, and we're going to flesh it out more in the Q&A. The next speaker, the most significant thing to know about her is that she went to high school with my wife Sheila at Mount Holman, Tacoma.
No, elementary, middle school, and high school.
Elementary, middle school, and high school. She is the woman she is today because she went to school with the woman that married me. But she was formerly the president of the Seattle Chamber of Commerce, formerly mayor of Tacoma, and is now Washington, or U.S. Congressperson for the 10th District here in the city, down in the city of, from the state of Washington. So would you please warmly welcome Marilyn Strickland, U.S. Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland. Come on, she's from Tacoma, center of the known world.
Thank you. Thank you. Tacoma is in the house, and it is always delightful to see my childhood friend and classmate from Edison Elementary, Gray Junior High, and Mount Tahoma High School, Sheila Stubbs Braxton, the First Lady. So I have been asked in 10 minutes to talk about 3 things. Number 1, my campaign. I am running for re-election. Number 2, thank you, the effect that Project 2025 will have on us, and especially the African American community. And number 3, I want to talk about a big event that happened last weekend, because we now have a new nominee to be President of the United States of America. But let me start. My name is Marilyn Strickland. I represent the 10th Congressional District of Washington State. I am the first African American to represent Congress in the history of Washington State. Honored to do so. And I fully understand that even though my congressional boundaries are East Tacoma, South Tacoma, Olympia, Lakewood, JBLM, Tumwater, Puyallup, etc., I often am representing all of us through the entire state, and I take that responsibility very seriously. So as we look at Project 2025, I have a confession to make. I really had not heard it with a formal title called Project 2025. But if you look at the contents, one thing is very, very clear. Project 2025 seeks to take away every right and every protection we have fought for over the past 60 years. As Mr. Howell mentioned earlier, everything from the EPA to the court system, to housing, to a woman's right to choose, to discrimination, everything we have fought for. And I was trying to think about how I sum it up in one word, and I talk about its fear of a nation that is more just and more equitable for all of us. And I often think about how this whole thing may have started a long time ago, but how a certain segment of this country reacted in 2008 when we elected Barack Obama to the White House. The fact that he won twice. So that was the beginning of the Tea Party. And now Congressman Smith and I have the pleasure of serving in Congress with people who call themselves the Freedom Caucus. So it's basically the Tea Party 2024. And we often sit in these hearings with them, and they're just about trying to tear government down, weaponize every department, and do these things. And we ask ourselves, why are they in government if all they want to do is tear it down? But again, they are there for a very specific reason. You know, every day when we're in Congress or here in home in the district, we are fighting for a nation that is more safe, more just, and more secure for all people. And part of the agenda for the Congressional Black Caucus that I'm a member of is that we want to help African American families build wealth. And we do that through housing, through jobs, and through justice. Because every policy decision that we are making will fall into one of those categories. Accessible, safe, affordable housing. Justice in the criminal justice system. Justice in voting, knowing that your right to vote is going to be something that's sacred and people won't try to stop you from voting, or that when you vote, your vote will count and you won't have an insurrection in Washington, D.C. trying to overturn the results of a legitimate election. That's what justice looks like. And then when we talk, thank you, and then we talk about, you know, what it means to have opportunities to be secure, to say, I am a functioning member of the United States of America. This country belongs to me as much as it belongs to anyone else. I'm entitled to the rights and protections that all people have, as enshrined in the Constitution. I think about the fact that when we're talking about the climate and the attempted way to dismantle the EPA that is part of Project 2025, Richard Nixon, a Republican president, started the Environmental Protection Agency. And so this is not a diatribe against all conservatives, because there are conservatives who have the same goals that we do. They just have a different perspective of how to get there. But this is about extremists, extremists who hate government, who want to shut it down, who want to tear it apart, and what it means. So let's talk about some of the gems in Project 2025. They want to ban African American history from classrooms. They want to cut Social Security and Medicare benefits that Black Americans and all Americans have rightfully paid into and are benefits that we deserve. They want to eliminate anti-discrimination rules in housing. There's a reason we have a Fair Housing Act, because whether or not we want to admit it, housing discrimination does exist today. We have a Black maternal mortality crisis in America. Black women who are pregnant and carry children to full term are more likely to die in childbirth than any other peer group. And by eliminating reproductive freedom, reproductive choices, and the ability to address this issue, they're actually creating more death in the Black community. They want to call for the FDA to reverse its 24-year approval of the widely used abortion pill, the morning after pill, I can't even say it. And they want to call to defund and reverse DEI policies in federal agencies. Congressman Smith and I have sat in the House Armed Services Committee for 3 hours at a time listening to them to try to dismantle DEI in the US military. 40% of the people who serve in the military who are enlisted are people of color. And for many people, like my family, this was a path to the middle class. It was a way to get skills, to get a job after you got out of the military, to get that military pension, and then work a civilian job and get double income when you retire. Another thing that is helpful too, they want to remove the Department of Education and Head Start. Head Start has been integral to our community in helping our children do well when they get to school. So as we talk about what is important for us to remember in Project 2025, the simple answer is they want to take away every right and every protection that we have fought for 60 years, and it will disproportionately affect our community. So when people ask you what it is, that's the simple version. You don't have to read 900 pages to know what's in it and to know it's bad. And what I often say is, if Project 2025 is nothing or that big of a deal, then why is Donald Trump trying to run from it? He knows what it is, and they're trying to repackage it now. They may call it something else, but it's still out there and it's still part of their agenda. So I will end with this. The best way to ensure that Project 2025 doesn't happen is to elect Kamala Harris to be our president. And I want us to remember something. I'm supporting Kamala Harris because I am thrilled that we will have the first Black president who's a woman. I am thrilled we will have the first Asian president who's a woman. I am thrilled that we will have the first Blasian president, like me, who's a woman. But let me tell you the main reason I'm supporting Kamala Harris. She's the most qualified candidate to take Joe Biden's place as his successor. That is the simplest, most plain, accurate reason. So when people say that Kamala Harris is a DEI candidate, I say, yes, she is. She definitely earned it. When people question whether she's qualified, I say, she was a prosecutor. She was the Attorney General for the largest Justice Department in the United States outside of the DOJ. She was a US Senator. She has served for 3.5 years beside President Joe Biden. And everything that we have accomplished in the last Congress and this one, she has had a hand on it. So miss me with this conversation about her being not qualified to be President of the United States of America. She is the most qualified candidate. So how do we make this real? 80 million people did not vote in the last presidential election. You heard me, 80 million people. We have to show up, because when we show up, we win. So those of us here in Washington State, we get our ballots in the mail, it's postage paid, it is so easy. But we're still anticipating low voter turnout in this primary that is next Tuesday. So my message is, please vote. But in November, which is merely 14 Tuesdays away, We are going to go backwards with Project 2025, or we're going to keep on building on the success of equity, inclusion, prosperity for all people. So let us vote. Let us call our family members across the country and tell them to show up and vote. We can do this, but we can only do it when we show up. Thank you for letting me be here today, and let's get out and vote, and let's win in this election cycle.
Come on, great big hand for Marilyn Strickland. And she did it in 10 minutes, actually 9, because she's from Tacoma. She said she can follow directions. Hey, let the church say amen. Our next speaker, also a U.S. Congressman who was formerly prosecutor in the city of Seattle, focusing on domestic violence and drunk driving. He's a ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee and was the first person to confirm that he would be here tonight. And I am always getting texts and emails from his staff, so I get constant contact. And so I want to thank him for being here tonight. Would you help me give him a warm welcome? Born in D.C., raised in SeaTac, Congressman Adam Smith. Come on, we can do better than that.
Thank you.
Patty
It's great
cake him.
to
Don't
be here.
patty
Thank
cake
you.
him. Give him a hand.
So I am going to talk about Project 2025, but I want to start positive and end positive. So we're going to do that in the middle. First of all, how excited are we about Kamala Harris? Thank you. As some of you may know, I was fairly outspoken on the subject of the need for us to have a different nominee this time. There were a variety of different reasons for that, but one of them that didn't get reported enough was because I know how good Kamala Harris is. And I know what she can do for this country and for this campaign. And in the last, what are we up to now, 9, 10 days? Has she done it? Yeah. I have never seen anything like this, literally. And I was an early supporter of Barack Obama, and that was pretty damn good. I mean, that was a lot of enthusiasm coming out. But in the last 12 days since this announcement was made, I have never seen this country as excited about a presidential candidate in my life. We have an incredible opportunity here. Let's take it, seize it, and make it happen. So that's number one. Number two, Project 2025 really isn't that complicated. It is about, first and foremost, giving Donald Trump as much power as he can possibly grab so that he can dictate over this country. Remember, he's the one who said he wanted to be a dictator on day one, and he told a group just last week, vote for me this time, and then you won't have to vote again. Now, what do you think he meant by that? We are facing an existential threat to our representative form of government, and Project 2025 is the blueprint for Trump and his minions to implement that threat if he wins. That's what it is, so don't let him win. The other thing that Project 2025 is a statement that says we don't want equal opportunity. We don't want equality. We want a small privileged group of overwhelmingly white men to be in charge of everything. They miss those days, and they want to bring them back. That is what Project 2025 is about. That is why they want to change the way we teach history. And you saw it down in Florida. We do not want to talk about the racist history of this country. I'm reading a book right now called A Fever in the Heartland, which was about the rise of the Ku Klux Klan back in 1920. And if you're unaware of that history, it will scare the hell out of you. I think I'm talking to an audience that is very much aware of that history, and it still scares the hell out of you. That's what they want to bring back. Their vision of history is what we saw in Florida. They want to talk about the upside of slavery. I guess it was a workforce development program in their mind. We've got to stop that because we've made so much progress in this country. We are working towards greater equality and greater opportunity. They want to roll that back. That is what this document is about. It's why they want to take power away from the Department of Education, from the Housing Department, from government's ability to help people have a fair shot in this country. They want to take that away from all of us to consolidate power in the hands of the few. And let me just talk just for a moment about the misogyny that is involved in this, which hasn't been mentioned yet. Shout out to J.D. Vance for driving home the point, by the way. So I'll tell you a story. I was adopted. My mother worked for the State Department. And this was 1965 when I was born. I was an out-of-wedlock child. At that time, in the State Department, if you were a woman and you got married, you could no longer work there, okay? And there were a ton of jobs like this. And the understanding was, if you're a woman, you got a man to take care of you. And if you're working, you're just taking a job from a man, okay? That's the way the world was. So she darn sure couldn't keep working if she had an out-of-wedlock child. So that's part of the reason that I was adopted. Do not underestimate the depth of the sexism that this country has had, and they want to bring it back. Abortion isn't just about pro-choice and abortion and being against it. It is about controlling women and taking away their options in this world. And we need to fight back against it. And there's a whole bunch of different reasons why, but my basic philosophy is we all have talent. I have not yet come across the group of people in any particular category that has more talent or less talent than any other group of people. We need equal opportunity so that people can pursue their talents, so that they can help all of us have a better, more just, more fair, more prosperous society. We need greater equality, and it doesn't just happen. You have to work for it. You have to work towards it. Sadly, part of human beings is we have an inbred desire to not necessarily like people who don't look like us. There's a distrust that comes from that. You have to build that trust, and you can, and you do. I look out at this incredibly diverse audience, and I know it can be done, and I know the benefits that our society takes when we do build that trust and that equality. Project 2025, Donald Trump, your man Stephen Miller, who you're absolutely right, they want to take all that away because they missed the days when white men were in charge and nobody questioned it, okay? They missed those days. We can't let them bring them back. So, the positive note that I want to end on is, yes, you can be horrified by Project 2025. You can be horrified by Donald Trump. You saw how he did today with the black journalists. I thought about texting a couple of Republican friends of mine. I said, oh, this is really our bad. We didn't tell you that Kamala's black? Should we send out a memo next time? Make sure you keep up with us? Yeah, so you got all of that. We have an incredibly positive agenda on our side. President Biden has done a great job as president of this country, okay? He has guided us out of the pandemic into the strongest economy of any post-pandemic country in the world, okay? He has passed the Inflation Reduction Act to begin to address climate change. He has passed the Infrastructure Act to rebuild this country. And then on the Armed Services Committee, with Maryland's help, one little thing that we were able to do in terms of working towards equality, we got them to finally change the names of all those bases named after Southern Confederates, okay? The monuments to white supremacy were taken down in an incredibly positive way. And also, let's remember, President Biden's agenda isn't done yet. It was a little thing called Build Back Better. And the idea was, again, equality of opportunity. We were going to raise the taxes on the rich and the big corporations, and we were going to take that money to give people better education, better health care, early childhood development, home health care, child care, all the things that enable working class people to have a decent life. We have an agenda as a Democratic Party that we should all be really excited about and really proud about. And now we have an outstanding messenger to drive home that message at the top of the ticket in Kamala Harris. So the best thing to know about Project 2025, it ain't happening, okay? because we are going to stop it. It is not what America is about. America is about equality and opportunity for everybody and about fighting to make sure that it happens. We're not going back. And I thank everybody in this room for being part of making that happen. As I said at the start, and I'll say at the end, the energy that you have shown is infectious, and it's happening all across the country. Keep it up. Thank you very much.
Let's hear it for U.S. Congressman Adam Smith. The nation is indebted to him. He was one of the first to come out and publicly talk to the president and ask him to step aside. I know the backlash was fierce, but political courage is what this moment calls for, because so many people are small at a big moment, but you were big at a big moment, and you got the ball rolling. We thank you for it. Come on, give him a great big hand. Give him a great big hand. And I thank you for being autobiographical in part. I didn't miss that, because sometimes you wonder where people's passions come from. And I always say that if I can learn enough about a person's history, I can figure out why they are the way they are. And so I thank God for him. I couldn't help but notice, though, he said, damn once and hell twice. And I'm not criticizing him because, see, I'm quoting him because as a preacher, I don't get to cuss in public that often. You guys do it all the time. So I'm not cussing now, but I'm quoting him. But damn, it feels good. Thank you, man. You done set me free. Pray my strength in the Lord. Next, our final congressperson is going to appear remotely. Tomorrow morning is the homegoing service for icon Sheila Jackson Lee in Houston. And Familia Jayapal was asked by the family to speak at the service. So she is rightfully there, but she could not have her voice conscripted into this conversation tonight, so at this time.
I'm Congresswoman Jayapal, and I'm honored to serve Washington's 7th Congressional District in Congress, where I also serve as chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Thank you, Reverend Braxton, for your vision and your leadership in pulling this extremely important conversation together. I wish I could join in person, but I'm honored to be speaking at a memorial service for my dear friend and colleague, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee in Houston. In Congress, I am proud to be a founding member of the Stop Project 2025 Congressional Task Force. This task force was established because we need to make sure the American people know what is so clearly laid out in Trump's Project 2025 manifesto. This is an almost 1,000-page agenda for a next Trump presidency, and we need people to understand how high the stakes are this November. Donald Trump's Project 2025 aims to take total control of our democratic institutions and our government for the benefit of one person who has said himself that he wants to be dictator on day one. Trump's Project 2025, and it is important that we name it Trump's Project 2025, is a whole of government approach to ending our freedoms, destroying our democracy, and wrecking our economy. Our movement has already been successful at talking about Trump's Project 2025, that Trump himself is trying to distance himself from it, even calling it, quote, too extreme. Well, he's right about that. It is too extreme, but please do not be fooled. This is clearly Trump's agenda, written by 6 of his former cabinet secretaries, advised by his former chief of staff, and with at least 31 of the 38 authors being highly placed in his administration and continuing to serve as his advisors and people that he said will be named cabinet secretaries. So what is Trump's Project 2025 manifesto? I don't want to sugarcoat this. It is a blueprint for structural regime change with the overthrow of secular democratic government, replacing tens of thousands of people in the professional civil service with an army of Trump loyalists and sycophants, implementing the mass deportation of immigrants and ending birthright citizenship, giving mass pardons to January 6th insurrectionists to become the president's shock troops for more political street violence, imposing Christian white nationalism in public settings, making the Department of Justice a political tool of the president to prosecute political opponents, disengaging from NATO, and allying instead with other autocrats and dictators, and systematically attacking voting rights and democratic elections. Trump's Project 2025 continues the march to eliminating all reproductive freedom that Trump started when he appointed an extremist Supreme Court that overturned 50 years of precedent in Roe v. Wade and made it the case that today 1 in 3 women in America live in a state that has banned abortion. Trump's Project 2025 would implement a 50-state backdoor ban on abortion without Congress and jail healthcare providers. It would restrict access to contraception and IVF, and even calls for hospitals to stop enforcing laws to provide emergency care to pregnant people in need of an abortion. Trump's Project 2025 completely eliminates the Department of Education. It raises taxes on the lower and middle class while giving more tax breaks to billionaires and wealthy corporations, and decimates the right for workers to organize and form unions. So this town hall is so important because when you learn more about Trump's Project 2025 agenda, you can spread the word about why it's so incredibly important that we support Democrats up and down the ballot, from future President Kamala Harris to state and local electeds. Our votes are our future. And with Donald Trump as president and the Republican cult party that has bowed down to him, it is a dark future ruled by a dictator. But we can choose, and we choose light and joy and hope and opportunity for all Americans. We choose democracy, and to do that, it means we need your voice and your vote. Democracy can only survive and thrive when people actually participate and refuse to let cynicism blind them to our collective power to make change. As a progressive, as an organizer, I can tell you that perfection is rarely on the ballot, but real progress absolutely is. And no more so than today, in the face of these stark threats of a second Trump presidency. You can make the difference with your vote for Democrats up and down the ballot. And today, I'm also asking for your vote in my reelection so I can keep doing this important work on your behalf. It is the honor of my life to serve you and to ensure that we move forward and not backward. Let's show them that democracy will win, that the people will prevail. I look forward to working with you to make that happen.
Even in her absence, have a great big hand for Congresswoman Jayapal, who is so much on the cutting edge that someone like Sheila Jackson Lee would want her to speak at her service. What an honor and a recognition that is in itself of the level of consciousness and commitment to the uplift of the poor and the marginalized in our society. Our next speaker is a very successful attorney. She's been in private practice. She pursues justice every day of the week. She is the head of the Washington State NAACP. But I think the most significant thing about her brilliance, her true anointing, her divine selection, is that she went to the one high school in the state of Washington that matters. She's a graduate of the Lincoln High School in Tacoma, Washington. Won't you warmly receive Attorney Shalee Sechrest.
in August 1963, Martin Luther King Jr., he takes center stage at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And he says, the American Negro is isolated on a lonely island of poverty, surrounded by a vast ocean of material prosperity. And he begins to describe what it feels like to do everything that you're supposed to do and still come up short. He begins to describe for us, Black folk, we're brilliant, we're talented, we're ready and we're willing to work hard, but we're still coming up short. We want our check. Here in 2024, we capture what it looks like, what it feels like to be on that lonely island. And we use the term diversity, equity, and inclusion. My name is Shalice Seacrest. I am your regional president of the biggest, the baddest, the boldest, and oldest civil rights organization in the nation. I'm talking about the one, the only, NAACP. Hey, family. Hello, family. So when we're talking about Project 2025, know for the NAACP, who was founded and been around since 1909, Project 2025 is no different than Project 2021, Project 24 years before that, right? We know that Donald Trump is trying to distance himself from Project 2025, and now he's like, no, no, no. I had an agenda. That was Agenda 47. Look, you can call it by any other name. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's still a duck. And the American voters are smart enough to know what is really happening. So let's get into it. Now, NAACP, this election, it's not about a person. It's not about a party. This is about the policies that are undermining the efforts that people have died for in this country. (2025), I want to talk about the impact that it has on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like Pastor said, I've been an attorney for 20 years. We understand on a civil rights level that in order for us to take action inside of a civil court, Lim Howell is the greatest to do it. We all follow Lim's lead. In order for us to take any action in a civil court, unless they are actually saying the N-word or they're doing something individual, and we understand in fighting racism, oh, they are way more covert than that. We're able to track racism by this impact that it has, this disparate impact. And so we're able to look at the numbers now. Some young people say the math is mathin'. Make it make sense. You can sit there and say individually, this policy, you know, it's not about race if it's an individual thing. But if you get me, and you get her, and you get him, and her, and him, and her, and all the Black folks are saying the exact same thing, this now becomes an area where you're saying, it's an impact. This policy don't work for Black people. Does that make sense? Yeah. So when we're talking about Project 2025, and you hear these terms talking about, we don't want to capture race anymore. We don't want to disaggregate that data anymore. It causes too much division. Know that really what they're trying to say, we don't want to be held accountable anymore. We don't want you calling us on our stuff anymore. We want to tell you that it's a thing of the past, but when you bring those numbers up to us, we don't want you to be able to call us out on it. Let me give you a specific example of what it looks like here in Washington State. In 2012, there was a black contractor named Elton Mason. Eddie Rye, you'll remember this. Elton Mason, he filed a complaint with the Department of Justice saying, I live in Washington State, my business is certified and I have everything and I'm ready to get to work. Washington State had secured federal funding on the largest transportation construction project called the Seattle Tunnel Project. And Elton Mason, who had been in business, he said, I'm ready to go, and there's barriers in place that is keeping me from being able to get any contract here. Initially, Washington State said, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have affirmative action. Hate to do it, but there's nothing we can do. NAACP leaders inside of this room said that if he doesn't work, none of you work. You're getting federal funding. When Elton made that claim as an individual, we aired it, and before you know it, within 2 hours, there were 48 ready and willing black contractors saying the exact same thing. 2 hours, they all came in talking about, this is happening to me too. And we were able to change it. The Department of Justice said, Washington State, you're not going to get any funding from us until you can make this right. When we're talking about Project 2025 and the impact that it has on black folk, know that we're talking about the protections. We need those numbers so that we can make certain that we go forward, yes? Yes. The consent decree that Mr. Howell was talking about, that was for police reform. There's also been a consent decree in housing, right? It's those numbers that we're looking for. Now for the NAACP, because we've seen this before, we know the tactics of what is being at play here when it comes to black folks advancing. We also know how to fight back. On my way inside this church speaking, a young lady and her grandmother walked in the doors with me, Taya, from Rainier Scholars. She came in and she said, you know, I wanted to come here today because I'm learning about the NAACP. They're teaching us about the NAACP. Project 2025 wants to remove any history that we're teaching our young people. We've got, thank goodness, courageous leaders like Lakeisha Phillips Miller, school board director of Federal Way in the House, who's making sure education teaches the truth about us. But this young, brilliant young lady from Rainier Scholars, she walked in and she said, I heard about the NAACP, so I want to be here. I want all of us to make a commitment to Taya and to all of the young people that is sitting inside of this room, that we are going to protect them and the policies that are trying to stop them from growing, thriving, and advancing. We're going to make certain that we vote. We're going to make certain that we vote. Congresswoman Strickland said that there was a low turnout. Not now. Black folks, we know how to do this. This ain't our first rodeo. We're going to make certain that we bring our friends. We're going to text them. We're going to remind them. We're going to help them get the ballot off of the microwave. And we're going to turn it in on Tuesday. We're not going back. We're not going back. So when I say fired up, I want you guys to say ready to go. You fired up? Are you fired up? See you at the ballots. Thank you.
Come on, come on, come on. Put your hands together for the president of the regional NAACP, or as she said, NAACP. And when you do vote next week and in November, remember who was here tonight. Show up for the people who show up for you. In any relationship, the first requirement is to show up. Show up for the people who show up for me. That'd have been a good place for an amen. Our final speaker before we get to the Q&A period, and then I'll give you instructions on that because that's the most important part of the evening. And this brother's eager because we want you to be able to ask your questions, and that's why I wanted folks to cooperate with me on time. He is the president of one of the most transformative entities on the West Coast, in the state of Washington, and that is the Tacoma Black Collective. That now reaches black leaders well beyond Tacoma. It is the black leadership structure really throughout the entire Puget Sound. This man is a Vietnam vet. This man was born in Chi-Town in Chicago. This man is a former Black Panther. This man came to church by way of the Nation of Islam. He went from bean pie to fried chicken after church. This man was twice appointed by governors of this state to head the Department of Social and Health Services and the state mental health department. This is one of the most brilliant men I have ever met in my life, and my dear friend, I consider him my mentor to this day. Won't you warmly, 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 warmly receive my friend and fellow UPS alum, Mr. Lyle Kwazim.
Well, I ticked off all these things on my list, and they've been covered, which is a good thing. But it's a little bit dangerous, because that means I get 10 minutes to go where the hell I want to go. So, Adam Smith said it very well. We have to be preemptory. 2025 never gets any oxygen if we elect Pamela Harris. I said Kamala. I did say Pamela, yeah. If we elect Kamala Harris, we don't have to worry about 2025. So there's a strategy by the Trump camp and the Heritage Foundation, and they have a strategy for white folks, and they have a strategy for people of color, and especially black folks. So the strategy for white folks is to gaslight them. They would use 4 principles to implement 2025. First of all, they'd start out with outright lying. Then the practice of manipulating reality. Then the practice of scapegoating. And then add to that the practice of coercion. White folks won't know whether they're going or coming, because they won't know what the truth, they don't want to know any standard. And this is exactly what 2025 has for white folks. For people of color, it's a different process. They go gangster on us. And what I mean by gangster is when you take 12 million legal aliens and deport them, That's what cultural warfare looks like. And if we did it to them, we will do it to you. Intimidation, gangster power, we want to make you negotiate against yourself. We want you to be so frightened about what might happen to you because you just saw what happened to them that you will, in fact, stay in line. So we got white people who are confused, have been gaslighted. We got people of color, and especially black folks, who see those folks being deported, knowing, oh, my God, what might happen to me? Civil War, somebody just said. And so with 2025, with Project 2025, what we have to do is to understand that, and Attorney Howell brought up the unitary presidency. And there are Supreme Court justices who already agree with the unitary presidency. Alito is one of those Supreme Court justices that believe in that. So you have a unitary presidency. You have no longer federal civil servants. You have federal presidential servants, because all those folks will be vetted through Oracle and the Heritage Foundation and through a LinkedIn kind of process. And so they will know who all those folks are, and they will all pledge fealty to King Trump. I'm getting a lot of help from over here. Thank you. From King Trump. And so we have to know that 2025 also has a law enforcement component to it. And that law enforcement component comes out of the Department of Justice and the FBI. When these folks are now allowed, this department is now manipulated and reporting to the president all the people that they have on their list, and that list will grow and grow as time goes and goes, that they have a way to deal with them. And that, again, is part of the gangster part of this, the part of the intimidation. Trump's out of New York. He loves Alphonse Capone. He loves talking about gangsters. And he is and wants to be a presidential gangster. So, fear on one hand, gaslighting on the other hand, and moving forward to never have another election in the United States of America. So, our last speaker told us what to do. This is not deep in the manual. This is, you don't have to be one of the premier thinkers in the state of Washington. What you have to do is have a passion for freedom. You have to have a passion for justice. You have to have a passion to determine your own future. And here's the playbook. The playbook is to register, to vote, to talk to your family members, to register, to vote, to talk to your neighborhood and community, to register, to vote. If we register, if we vote, and if we get all of the people near and dear to us, the people that we influence, to register and to vote, we win. When we win, no more Project 2025. We move on to other issues, and there are many, many other issues that we need to spend this energy to address. So thank you very much. I just have one more thing to do, and I have an introduction to make. The previous speaker talked about education and how important it is. We just hired a new executive director for the Black Education Strategies Roundtable. Derek Harris, would you stand up and say hello to the people? We are good, and we're getting better. Thank you all very much.
Let's give Mr. Lyle Quasim a great big hand. And I want to thank him for all the work he's done, but I want to thank him for hiring Reverend Derek, because he is my pastor for young adults here at New Beginnings, and he just preached a sermon on how he was $6 short of being able to buy the taco that he wanted. And so now he can get the tacos of his choice. I told you, God answers prayer. Okay.
Family obligation.
Okay. Congressman Smith has to run, family obligation, but he cannot not be here. Let's let him leave to great applause, because the country is indebted to him. Thank you, sir. Tell me what you need. I'm on your side. Now, here, before you go, here's our process. We've given you cards, and write your question on the card. Those cards will be handed, passed down the aisle, and handed to our microphone attendees. So media services, put the microphone attendees at the microphones at this time. And then they will read the question to address to any one of our speakers up here. So I need a microphone attendee on each of these microphones. Write your question on the card. This avoids the 5-minute statement before the question that may or may not be in the statement. And we actually get more questions out, and they can address the question. So write your questions down. That forces you to be succinct and get to what you're asking and to clarify. And if you ask a question such as, how do you think the Seahawks are going to do this year? They're not going to ask that question, because it's not germane to our conversation here tonight. So please, the Bible says, in all thy getting, get an understanding. We want your questions. We have assembled tonight an awesome assembly of persons with expertise as legislators, as community organization leaders, as activists. And in the room, we have so much leadership acumen. And so we want your questions and to give you opportunity to raise those questions there tonight. So as those questions, as we have them at their microphones, you can begin asking them. And if they're directed at a particular person up here, media services have given each of these persons a microphone. They then can answer their questions. Also, we have tables set up in the narthex when this program is over. If you are not registered to vote, you can register to vote tonight. And I'm going to ask my daughter Carissa, who's in the back of the room, at some point to come up and explain to us the program that allows young people in this state to register to vote as early as 16, even though they can't vote till 18, to register so that they then begin receiving ballots at 18. So we want everyone to know how they can get in the game. So Carissa, at whatever point, I need you to make your way up here. Yes, because I said so. First question.
Thank you. Upon a personal privilege, I'd first like to thank my friend.
Personal privilege from who?
Congresswoman from Tacoma, Maryland Strickland, Seacrest, and my congressman just left, Adam Smith from the 9th Congressional District, where I was elected as the national delegate for Harris now. The first question says, after hearing all this info, what are our next steps? How can we use this information practically?
I'll start. So we're here today to talk about Project 2025 so that you all are clear about what the Trump agenda is. And as I said earlier, it's to erase every right and protection we fought for And then some of my colleagues on the stage pointed out, and to concentrate power in Trump's hands as a dictator so there are no more elections. That is not a joke. And I can tell you it's not a joke because of January 6th. So what is our assignment? People who are registered to vote already, we need to get them to vote. We need to register those to vote who aren't voting. But here's something I want to make sure we understand. There is a voter suppression effort going on across this country against black people. And when we think about voter suppression, it is typically in the context of closing down polling stations, making it hard to get your voter registration card. There is a misinformation campaign that is telling you that the Biden-Harris administration has done nothing for black people. That is a form of voter suppression to get people to say, my vote doesn't matter. So as we think about what has to happen, talk about the good things that the Biden-Harris administration has done. Infrastructure bill, more jobs, low unemployment rate for our community, higher wages, investing in HBCUs. There is a whole list of things they have done. But our best defense against Project 2025 is to show up, to vote, and to make sure that Kamala Harris becomes our next president.
Next question. Raina?
Yes, sir. Thank you. What can we do to have an impact on the battleground states like North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Arizona?
Who wants to take that? Okay.
I won't hog the stage, so you go ahead, Shirley.
Angela Davis once said, the greatest way people give up their power is believing they don't have any. In those battleground states, black voters are often overlooked, underestimated. Look at the last presidential election. Those votes down in Detroit came in and changed the game. The votes down in Philly had Donald Trump sweating. Atlanta came through and clinched the win. We are often overlooked, the power of the black vote. The way that we make certain that those battleground states are won, we energize the base. That's the black voters. Get those who are 18 to 34 engaged in understanding exactly what's at play. Talk to them in real terms. Don't just talk about what happened back in 1960, 1950. You've got to make it make sense to them, something that they can connect to. If you're able to share specifically how a policy impacts them, they're going to lead the way and make certain that everybody in their circle votes. That's how we take over those battleground states.
Okay. Can we turn all of these mics on?
The other thing I want to add too, I'd say up until Kamala Harris became our nominee, which she will at the convention, we talked about battleground states in the context of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Georgia and North Carolina are now in serious play because she is on the ballot and our community is fired up and ready to vote for her.
Over here.
How will Project 25 affect voting rights? How will Project 25 affect our democracy?
Well, first of all, if Donald Trump gets elected and Project 2025 is implemented, there won't be any more voting. I mean, this will be your last vote. I mean, we have to treat this as the serious issue that it is. This is a win or go home election. And if we don't understand that, then we are asleep at the wheel, and I don't believe that we're asleep at the wheel. And so we have to make sure that Donald Trump, we have to stop this. There's a thing called root cause prevention. We have to stop this at the root. If we get Kamala elected to the presidency, then we won't have to deal with 2025.
In the middle.
What does 2025 mean? What will happen after that? It sounds like something from the past. So what does it actually mean if it does get implemented? It sounds like this is something happening again
I think
from the past.
that sounds redundant to what we just answered. Do you have another question?
Yeah, I do actually. What did we do about the Electoral College and gerrymandering, etc.?
Anybody want to take that on?
So nothing is more undemocratic than the Electoral College. And the example that I use is that Hillary Clinton won by millions of votes in the popular vote, yet the Electoral College, a couple 100,000 votes in these 5 states was the difference between us getting a competent president and who took the White House at the time. So I think the question becomes, what would it take to eliminate it? But I still say this, the best antidote is to win the popular vote and the Electoral College. It can happen.
Right.
Getting rid of it would be a very, very heavy lift. But if you look at those swing states, I still say this, when we show up, we win. And this is not a drill. We must show up. And one thing I want to bring up too is that when you look at who the base of the Democratic Party is, it is black people. And even more so, it is black women. 96% of the time, black women show up. We vote, we turn out, and we do the right thing. Now, the sad part of this is that twice in the last 2 elections, white women chose Trump at 53%. So when people ask me, what do we do to turn out black vote? Everything I can. But I also need my white sisters to talk to their mothers, their aunties, their cousins, and their people, and to help them understand that if you support rights for women, you cannot possibly vote for Trump. So yes, it's on us to save America like we always do, but we need to engage the white women in our lives who we know and confront them and say, you all cannot do this again. You cannot do this again.
I want to move on to the next question over here, but maybe Lim or Lyle at some point can say something about what's happening with a meaningful part of our black men who are tangling up their value system to consider voting for Trump. And how do we move that back into the realm of sanity? I'm going to take this question over here, then I'm going to come back to either or both of you to speak to the internal campaign that we have to have on black men.
Thank you. Is there any concern with the initiatives outlined in Project 2025 to proceed even if Kamala Harris is elected president? If so, how can we combat this?
There won't be a problem if Kamala is elected president, because this is all banking on Trump. And you should understand, this is far more serious, and I didn't get a chance to get into it, but the Supreme Court has given this criminal, this thief of government top secret documents, this convict that has been found guilty of 34 crimes. And you tell me this is the best Republican can put forward? It all started with the birther movement when he denied that Barack Obama was born in this country, and he gathered followers. And this goes back to the Civil War and so forth, and we're still fighting it. And let me tell you, this is people who you're never going to change their minds, the core 35% that he has. And the fact that this man can stand up there who is a convict and talk as a candidate for president, it's disgusting. But if we elect Democrats, then Project 2025 goes out the window.
I want to try and address Pastor Braxton's question about men. We, black men, and in some cases men in general, but black men, we are underperforming in a lot of places. And so we all know that. So the question is, what do we do about that underperformance? We underperform in education. We underperform in voting. We have to have a strategy to reach for our brothers. And women have to be a part of that strategy. You have to continue to demonstrate to us how to get this done, because at 96%, you are the poster for how to engage in elections. Men have to rethink a lot of the things that we have been taught growing up, and a lot of the things that we kind of hold dear and cherish about superiority, about intellect, about we have to really understand that we are in serious difficulty, and men and women, we need to come together as a community, talk to one another, lift each other up. And it takes some humility, and sometimes it's difficult for men to figure out where that humility is. But if we don't, we're going to be a drag on progressive change in this country, and we don't want to be a drag on progressive change in this country. And so we have to have structured efforts to recruit young men, recruit old men, and recruit middle-aged men to come into the game, and come into the game with some humility and understanding and deference, and follow the lead that women have shown us.
To my left.
I'm a transit operator, local 587. What do you think about the transportation bill? Is he going to try to impact that?
He doesn't give a damn about the transportation bill. First of all, think back, and tell me when you've heard Donald Trump have any policy conversation. Any policy conversation. Think back and tell me when you have heard representatives, Republicans in the House of Representatives, come up with any policy conversation. None. So for us to associate him with a policy situation is off base.
In case you haven't noticed, all the men are up here cussing. Lim, you might as well say something before we're done.
This for Seacrest. This is from one of our youth, age 11, Caden. What can young people like Caden do to help?
Yes, that's an excellent question, Caden. Thank you. I see you. Young people still have a voice, even though they can't vote. We really saw that firsthand in the election of Barack Obama. There is an older generation who sat there and said, a black man will never be able to be elected. It just won't happen. Maybe one day, but today's not the day. It was young people who said, no, today's the day. We want that right now. The young people have always shaped the movement for progress. The lunch counter started with those young voices. It's always been the fearlessness. There's an impatience with young people that says, freedom in our lifetime. Don't tell me one day we shall overcome. I want it right now. It's that energy that we need in this election. Make certain that if you hear older people that can vote, that you share, no, I need you to vote. Even if it's not important to you, I need you to vote because my school, my education is impacted. I need you to vote because there's decisions being made about my body, my health care that I'm not even brought to the table to. I need you to show up for me. That's how young people have done it in the past. And that's what you young people are going to continue to do. We listen to you. Lead this movement. Take up space, young people.
Related to that question.
Reverend Braxton,
Go ahead.
I have a suggestion for you. I've been thinking about this. You say, what can black men do? Why do the white guys go out and say white guys for Kamala? Why can't we have a similar movement among black men, fraternities and black men's organization for her, to raise money and to give exposure of support for her?
I was on a call last week of 35,000 black men. So that is going on. But I will tell you, one of my dearest friends said to me what Donald Trump said today before the black journalists. He said to me, she ain't never been black.
Ridiculous.
And I said, you graduated from an HBCU, she graduated from HBCU. She's a part of a black sorority, you're a part of a black fraternity. I said, she got black DNA, you got black DNA, how do you disqualify her? And where did you get that from?
And my question is, did you disqualify Barack Obama? Because his mother is white and Kamala Harris's mother is Indian.
I think it points to this, one of the legacies of slavery. We have had this colorism and this internal caste system, because if you were white, you're right. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're brown, stick around. If you're black, jump black. And if you're red, you're dead. And we've been playing those games with each other. When Russell Wilson came to Seattle during the Legion of Boom, you had some of the other brothers in the room, Richard and them, saying he wasn't black enough.
Yeah.
So I guess he changed wives to become more black. And started hanging out with Jay-Z and them and forgot how to play football and went to Denver. I don't know. But I think that's part of what we still have to be healed from, our self-hate that shows up in a lot of different ways. Let me take some prerogative and ask this question related to the question of youth. School's going to start in September. We couldn't end school quick enough in terms of the college campuses because the young people were no longer drinking the genocidal Kool-Aid going on in Gaza, and America's complicity in the ethnic cleansing and the replacement that's been going on for 80 years there. And the winning coalition includes young people. There's no Southern Smile or no Blue Wall without young people. Netanyahu played a lot of games, divisive games, with the Democratic coalition by coming here, speaking to the Congress. Water's edge politics are supposed to end, and we only have one president at a time, to meet with Kamala and then go to Mar-a-Lago, and then to expand the war to make what's going on in that war, in that region, a divisive issue in our presidential politics to split our coalition. My question to some of the elected officials is, is Vice President Kamala Harris prepared to say explicitly, while Israel remains and should be an ally of ours, there has to be daylight between the United States and any ally. Our alliance is always conditioned on our allies complying with international law and American values, because we will not support international crimes, criminals, or rogue states.
Well, I think she said that, Reverend. I think she said that.
She inferred it, and I was happy with her first remarks. But when school starts in the fall and the protests start again, is she prepared for being asked that question over and over again?
Yeah, she said she will not keep closed eyes to the situation, and it's got to stop. The bombing in Gaza has got to stop. And I give a minor credit to Biden for stop giving them bombs to drop there. Yeah. And I think she made no qualms about it when she met with Netanyahu and saying, you know, we sympathize with what they did in Israel starting in October, but this bombing of innocent women and children has got to stop. She said that.
Thank you. With the election coming up, the August elections, can you talk about the importance of voting for Senate and U.S. Congress candidates?
Yes, I'm going to take that and say how important that is. I have to tell you that the little pittance that I get, I send it to Missouri to fight Hawley. I send some to Adam Schiff in California. I send some to Colin Allred, who is fighting Cruz. And I guess the most vulnerable person we have here is Marie Glutenkamp.
Marie Perez, I call her, to make it easier.
Yeah, I think she's good. And I give to the candidates who have an uphill battle. And Representative Strickland, you're so far ahead.
Okay, so let me break something down to you about my district. Just because I win does not mean it's easy. And I say this respectfully of my colleagues Adam Smith, Pramila Jayapal, and folks who live in districts that are considered D+20 on the partisan index.
Right.
Now, down in Pierce County and Thurston County, where I am, my district is D+4. So in order for me to have a winning coalition, I need to appeal to a broader base of people. I will never compromise my values. So when Mr. Howell says I have an easy time, I'm a Black and Korean woman running for Congress in the United States of America. It is never an easy time. But with that said, my team works very, very hard in our district. We keep all of our focus locally, and that's why we know how to win. I am used to tough battles. I am battle tested. But just for the record, it's never easy, sir.
I live in District 10, and I vote in District 10, and I donate in District 10.
But I also want to come
Folks, you have to go to your savings bank and draw out some money and send it to these candidates who need the money. It's a matter of life and death for the Republic. I'm serious.
No, and up and down the entire ballot.
Right.
So we have Representative Jamila Taylor here, who is running for re-election. We need to make sure she comes back. Up and down the entire ballot, from President of the United States to your local school board. So this is why it all matters.
All of these folks need more than our thoughts and prayers. As Martin King said, we came here today to cash a check.
Thank you.
See, one of the things that is very difficult, and it just happened up here, and I feel at home, so I'm going to just call it out, is that I have a lot of respect and history for Attorney Howell. But he just said to Marilyn Strickland, you got it easy. And when we start talking about men, we have to look at this differently. We have to understand the issues that women of color, Black women, go through, and come with some humility with them and with each other. I mean, because the road that we're on is a dead end. And we have to somehow change direction. And if we don't change that direction, if we don't find a way that we can be in community together, be in a sync with one another, that supports one another unconditionally. I talk to people I don't know. I talk to people I don't like. And then people have an issue with a Black woman who has one thing that they don't like about them. Yep. And then all of a sudden, that becomes the whole conversation. What is that about? You know, I mean, we just have to, and I'm 81 years old, so I come from the old school generation, and we have to change how we look at these issues, and younger people have to change how we look at these issues, because this road is a dead end.
Oh, it's starting to feel like the kitchen table
one of
now.
the things
I'm 88. I'm 88, and I support black candidates in Delaware. We have a black sister who is
Lisa
running.
Blunt Rochester running for U.S.
Right,
Senate.
Right. I send her money. So I figure if black people who have a little dough don't send it to blacks throughout the country. Colin already is black in Texas. I figure, what right do I have to speak about sending if I don't send to brothers and sisters throughout the country? So I do that.
All right.
One of the questions, I'm sorry, I just want to touch on this. If ever you are looking for who's running, what are their values? Who looks like me? Because representation matters. Always look for the NAACP. Here in Washington State, we've got 16 different branches throughout our state. Look, because we're always hosting voter engagement candidate forums. You can identify and lifting up the voices, because sometimes it's hard for black candidates to get the same airtime, right? Jamila Taylor, thank you for successfully holding your position year after year. We got to make certain she gets reelected, you guys. Know her face, know her name. But you can always do a Google search in whatever city that you're in for an NAACP branch, and then look and see when they're going to have a candidate forum. The reason why is because we are nationally trained to make certain that each candidate who's asking for your vote tells you specifically their plan for the black community. So make certain that you key in on those.
So just, excuse me, just one more thing, because this is real. This is real, and it's contemporary, and it's today. And it was in reference to the NAACP. We're talking about two candidates, one black, one white. And a person from the NAACP said, well, he don't come to the NAACP meeting. I said, so what? Well, he ought to come to, I don't know if I want to vote for him because he doesn't come to the NAACP. I said, did a white person come to the NAACP meeting? And who are you more likely to get to come to the NAACP meeting, the white person or the black person? I mean, we come up with these false structures that we can't get over. And so we got to think differently. We got to show up differently. We got to embrace each other in ways that we haven't embraced each other before. And just because you don't come to the NAACP don't mean I won't vote for you.
Over here. This is getting good here. We just warming up.
What's the best way to educate our people on the severity of Project 2025? What plans do Democrats have in place to drive home this point?
So one of the things that I remind my colleagues of, and even in the administration, is that we are policymakers in Washington, D.C., but our top job is as communicators. And we often do it badly. We talk in language that people do not understand. I see memos that I don't even understand from my colleagues sometimes. And so we have to be very plain-spoken and direct about what something is. So I don't expect anyone to listen to me explain a 900-page document. And to be honest with you, I'm not going to read a 900-page document. But I know what its contents are. And it is undermining every right and every protection we have fought for. And as mentioned earlier, we always call it Trump's Project 2025. Make him own it, even though he's trying to run from it. So that's my advice about how we discuss it.
Senator Mike?
No, it's on now. Thank you. All right, this is a similar question. Is there a quick 1 or 2 page bullet point document that's available online or that could be mailed or shared or highlighted
Okay.
the main points of the Project 2025.
Let me give you one. I thought Velchi on MSNBC did a great summary of Project 25, and you can get it on MSNBC. Velchi did a good summary.
And what about the ones that don't have cable?
If you just Google, go to Google and hit what's in Project 2025, several sites will come up that'll give you a bullet point analysis of it.
Thank you.
Okay, next question.
Representative Taylor, this one's for you. How would you like the state legislator to show up in this moment?
Go to the mic. Just direct it now.
Well, actually, I was posing that to you all. How would you like us in the state legislature? We are a sanctuary state, and we've already seen how we had to work in protecting women's rights here as folks in Idaho and other states are coming here to get their needs met medically. As a person who just went through surgery to remove 4.5 pounds of fibroid tumors, I was a 5-pound baby. That's a lot of tumors. So I was off the campaign trail this summer. Women's health. These are things that are really a concern with Project 2025. And I'm really wanting to make sure that as the chair of the Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee, that we are protecting Washingtonians and that we are protecting other citizens who are coming to this area, other residents who are coming to this area because they need help. Their state is ignoring them. Their state is pushing them out. So my question to you is, what can we do as a state in our legislature to amplify your voice in Congress and implement policies that can be eventually brought back to Congress?
So I would say keep doing what you're doing. Washington State is one of the states in the country that acts as a backstop to all the bad things that they're trying to bring from Congress into the United States, to the different states. And I think about the reproductive rights issue, right? So we have women crossing state lines now, coming to Washington to get access to safe and legal abortion. What that does is put a strain on our system. So what can we do to make sure that our agencies here are funded so that they can accommodate the people who are crossing state lines to come here? So I think that's the one thing. And number two, continue to be an example of how these policies we pass are good for the economy, how they're good for families, and do what we can. And then finally, we need more housing. We have a housing crisis. And the federal government can pour all the money we want into Washington State, but if local land use rules do not allow you to build more housing, nothing is getting built. So what can we do to address local land use laws that prohibit us from building more housing?
Thank you.
Next question.
Okay. This is for Congresswoman Strickland. What are your Republican colleagues saying about Project 2025? Are they on board? Are they publicly, vocally supporting Project 2025?
So when I think about what it's like to be in the minority right now, and it's just by a few members, some of the things that are in Project 2025, little mini versions, they try to pass anyway through legislation. But what are my Republican colleagues saying honestly? Ever since Kamala Harris became the presumptive nominee to the Democratic Party, they are in a strain. So they're not even really thinking about legislating right now because they're trying to figure out what they're going to do to try and get Trump into office. Now, I will tell you that I serve with some Republicans who quietly say to me, Trump is the problem. Trump is the reason we are going to have our democracy in danger. And what I tell folks is this: the beauty of voting is that no one knows what you do. So if you're inclined to do the right thing, I won't tell anybody. Just do the right thing.
Next question.
Right now, there are American veterans who have fought for this country and have been deported or have been in the process of being removed. Some veterans have been fortunate to return as a result of FAMV1. Will they have to, or how can they get the opportunity to vote? For those that returned, how can they vote now?
Well, you have to be a citizen in order to vote. In fact, when you sign that sheet for our mail-in voting in this state, it says, I'm a citizen over 18 years or older and so forth. You better read that document because it's signed on the penalties of perjury. If they're deported and they can't be American citizens and deported, they deport a lot of immigrants who are not American citizens, who are here illegally. They don't have a green card. So my advice is to any veteran, and they're also reducing veterans' benefits under Project 25, is that try to get your citizenship, your American citizenship, and stay in this country. They cannot vote if they're not citizens.
Thank you.
If you look on page, I believe it is 130, so either 130 or 103. I think it's 130 in Project 2025. It says that all schools that receive federal funds, which means all public schools, and a small fraction of private schools, that a requirement is that they would have to take the military entrance exam. So whereas affirmative action, this Supreme Court made unconstitutional, they made the exception with the military, because 70% of the people under the age of 30 in this country are black, brown, red, and yellow. The United States literally at this point cannot field an army without minority children. Those 3 U.S. soldiers that was killed in Iraq, they all look like us. And so there is a tracking toward the military away from college. This is social engineering. This is all part of the agenda of getting back to 1955 America. There's no shame in going into the military, but there's a sense of whose place is where, whose place is elsewhere. So this is a policy blueprint for changing the landscape in American society. Another question as we wind down. Okay.
I have it. Project 2025 special education is in great need to be revamped because special education receives money but fails to deliver quality service. This is for Congresswoman Strickland.
What was the question?
Okay.
It's a statement.
I just get to ask questions, y'all. Special education is in great need to be revamped because special education receives money but fails to deliver quality service.
So special education is Title I funding that comes from the federal government. But I think this speaks to a larger question about the state's paramount duty to fully fund education. We have made an attempt to do it, but it hasn't worked out the way we thought it would because of property tax values and inequities. The other thing that's interesting too is that when you think about local school levies that often show up on our ballots, those were meant to actually help supplement basic education. So special ed programs, that's what we're supposed to pay for with local levies. All the things that are considered extras above and beyond what we consider basic education. So I'd say overall, the system is broken. We want to increase Title I funding from the federal government, as always, but I also would say that the funding model from the federal to the state to the local level is not operating the way it was supposed to operate. And sadly, special ed students and students of color end up bearing the brunt of it not working out for students.
Starting with Mr. Limhow, I want to give each of our presenters here an opportunity for final thoughts and words.
Thank you so much, Reverend, because I couldn't contain myself anymore. I told you about the civil rights section of the Justice Department, and I won't go in about Goebbels, the Stephen Miller. But here's what the Project 25 provides for. For our civil rights section, It would use the civil rights section to use a full force of the federal prosecutorial resources to investigate and prosecute state and local governments and institutions of higher education, corporations, and any other private employers who are engaged in discrimination in violation of the constitutional and legal requirements. You know what that means? They threw out affirmative action. Now, if any local government is doing, what is it? Diversity, education, and inclusion, they'll turn it around to prosecute them. Do you understand? The very reverse of what that section was provided for. And that's what I had to get out of my mind.
Mr. Lyle Kwazim.
Thank you very much. It is difficult for me to express how good I feel to be here tonight with you, to be on this panel, to be in the middle of an exciting time in our lives in this country. We should be buoyed by this. We should be energized by what we can do at this time in our lives in this political situation. I'm just happy to be here. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this.
Amen. Okay. No, you're next.
Well, I too want to express my gratitude to you and the congregation and the folks in the community who came out to listen to this very important discussion. So I will leave with a few thoughts. As Lyle mentioned, there is a level of enthusiasm and excitement that wasn't here 2 weeks ago in the presidential campaign. So we cannot squander that energy. We have to use it and we have to harness it. And here's why this is important. Despite all the hype and enthusiasm and voter registration and volunteers, this is still an uphill battle for a Black and Indian woman to be president of the United States. Do not get complacent about this. So for all of our enthusiasm, we still have to work doubly hard. What is the saying? We have to work twice as hard to get half as much. This applies in this situation as well. So we're happy, we're energized, we're gonna do this, but make no mistake, it is not going to be easy. It is never easy. So let's show up and vote. Let's call our people in those swing states, and let's do everything we can so that when Election Day is over, 14 weeks from now, we put everything on the field, every ounce of effort we expended, because the consequences of not doing that are too great. Thank you.
U.S. Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland from District 10, who wanted us to know when you start writing the checks, don't leave hers out. Amen. And last but certainly not least is the Washington State NAACP Chair, Shalee Sechrest.
Thank you, thank you. One of the final thoughts that come into my mind is just really reflecting on the things that we've overcome. The resiliency inside of this movement, right? Sometimes Black women are told that we are angry. I hope all of you are angry. I hope all of you are angry and ready to turn that anger into action, because that's when things get done. Some of my final thoughts are that not only vote, because that is an action and that is making a statement, but also to make certain that you speak up more. Be in the classrooms, be in the boardrooms, be at work, and really share your story. Because sometimes if we're not sharing our story, other people will tell it for us, and they're going to miss the point of what it looks like in our workplaces, in the living rooms, our ability to make ends meet, our ability to have health care. Tell your story, share it, speak out loud. Voting is one action, and we need to get that done, but it doesn't just stop there. Show up every single time in every single room and take up all of the space that you can. Thank you.
Congresswoman Strickland wants to add one thing.
I want to add one thing. So right now the Democrats are in the minority by a couple of votes. But if we show up in all 50 states and we take back the House, we also get to make history by making Hakeem Jeffries Speaker of the House. And you have seen him on TV, but when he becomes Speaker of the House, America is going to be introduced to more of his brilliance, more of his intelligence, and more importantly, more of his ability to get things done for the American people. So I didn't want to neglect that point.
And I would ask Eddie Rye to quit publishing my bank routing number.
And while we're at it, let's give Eddie Rye another hand for being the inspiration and the genesis of tonight's event. He continues to serve this community. Before we leave, if you take your seats for just a moment, we always leave decently and in order. And I do want to acknowledge Larry Gossett, who served this community so many years. He and Eddie worked together for years. Hayward Evans, I see you over there, and several pastors, Victoria Carr-Ware of the Queen Anne Baptist Church, Dana McClendon was here, and I want Pastor Manaway to start making his way up here. He's the Dean of Preachers here in the Pacific Northwest. Can't nobody say it like Robert L. Manaway. And I want two people to come to the microphone, and Pastor Manaway, while you're stretching out, Carissa, if you would come up here and explain the program for our young people. I'm getting some of my return on this Howard University education. And then I'm going to ask Pastor Manaway if he would come and have some final reflections and pray us out. But I would be remiss if I did not thank my media services here at New Beginnings, Mr. Kevin Meeks and all of his crew, our fabulous CEO, Deacon Stephen Gray, for working with the local law enforcement and our own internal security, make sure everyone not only felt safe, but actually was safe, and all of our operations people. I am thankful and grateful. I am blessed here at New Beginnings to work with very talented, very smart, very educated people. And I want to thank my daughter Carissa, who felt sorry for me and me and Eddie and said, y'all don't know how to manage the media. I'll do it. Just tell me what you want. And so I want to thank Carissa for doing the media blitz to get everybody here tonight. Amen. Carissa?
Amen. Good evening, family. The time is well spent, so I will make this quick. One of the things that I think we have heard in this discussion today is the importance of voting, but also the importance of engaging our young people. In Washington State, we have so many luxuries I think we often take for granted because we don't have to wrap around blocks and buildings to get the vote out. In Washington right now, 16 and 17-year-olds can sign up in advance of their 18th birthday and become on the roll, so to speak, so that when they turn 18, they are automatically registered to vote, and in upcoming elections will begin to get their ballots. So my ask to everybody that's in here, if you are connected to a young person that is 16, 17, 18, and those who are, past 18 and everything, ensure that they are getting registered to vote, but don't ask them to do anything that you haven't. So if you are not registered to vote, there is a wonderful table on your way out. I ask that you either go online on your phone, your tablet, your computers, and do that quickly, or you can do it via paper, put it in the mail, go to your local election office and sign up. Again, don't ask young people to do what you will not do, but model the behaviors in which you want them to do so that we can be carrying the baton. Get 16, 17-year-olds registered, because posting online does nothing for us if it's not followed up by actual action that will shake the system. And now we can leave. You're welcome.
Hey, thank you. I want our photographer to get in place, because as soon as Pastor Manaway has prayed us out, I would like to get a group picture with these folks up here. And Sister Braxton, if you'd make your way up here, I'd like you to be a part of that picture. Can we all stand And, or excuse me, stay seated. Pastor Manaway will have us stand when he's ready. Could you just give us your sentiments, sir? I looked up to him. This is my big brother. Let's give a great big hand for 40 years pastoral service to the Seattle community. Come on, folks. This is Robert L. Manaway, Senior Pastor of the Tabernacle Baptist Church, current president of the North Pacific Baptist Convention. Preacher par excellence.
Friend or foe, I'm so grateful for this privilege, and let me be quick to acknowledge God, who gives us strength and the wisdom that we sit and stand in this place. To Pastor Braxton, I'm amazed every time I get a chance to sit back and see him serve. And had it not been for God calling him to preach, he'd probably be in Congress somewhere. Should be. And such a brilliant mind. And his enthusiasm is contagious. To Eddie Rye, 40 years, bless you, well done. This esteemed panel of women who serve us in our community. These men, these Elijahs and Elishas of our community, God bless them. And I heard a lot of profanity in here tonight. I'm a little old-fashioned, so I still kind of scream when I'm in the sacred place, and I kind of take a slide over. Now, Lord, make sure you aim the boat at the right place. Just, I didn't do it. And the Tabernacle Church is well aware of my testimony, though. One of my proclivities that God so profoundly saved me from and kept me from is profanity. I used to love to curse. I loved this so much until I would stand in the mirror and curse myself out. So I guess what I'm trying to say, I can't play with it. I have to keep it under wraps. We've heard so many things in this room tonight encouraging us concerning Project 2025. I think the urgency of what it means has been so clearly articulated. So I wouldn't dare to restate all the things that have been stated. The profound thing that I heard tonight, though, is that this is not a drill. This is for real. I cringed a few days ago when I heard President Trump say, for me it was insulting, you Christians vote. This will be the last time you have to do it. What a message. I took that on personally. My friend Pastor Braxton usually calls me late at night, and I'm usually at the end of the day, so I'm usually tired. He says, how you doing? I say, fine. I said, I'm tired. He said, you're always tired. But that night he called me to be here. I was watching Gunsmoke. Matt Dillard was transferring a prisoner over the mountains. It came down a little shade, crossing a slight lowland desert. Horses died, ran out of bullets. It was a bad situation. But thirst got them. You know, they were thirsty. And they came across this pool of water as I was hanging up from talking to Pastor Leslie. And thirst drove them to drink first, think later. After being filled with the water, they failed to observe that there was a sign saying clearly, big letters, bad water. I didn't do it. Said bad water. It wasn't long before quenching their thirst made them sick unto death. I'm afraid tonight that some across our country will bow and they will drink. And they would drink. I need another mic. Switch another mic, batteries. And I'll hurry. If I was in church, I would say, I rebuke you, Satan. Everybody else's mic was clear when the preacher get up. Bad water. And they were almost dead until somebody revived them. And the only way they could revive was that they had to drink some stuff that didn't taste good, but it was good for them. I think every now and then God gives us this same cycle. Some of us getting intoxicated and filled with the wrong things of life. Congresswoman Strickland believing the lies, not buying into the real truth of what's going on. And we fill ourselves with bad stuff, and it's hard, Larry, to get it out. But sometimes you have to take some stuff to cause you to regurgitate. I think it's time for people to throw up and be sick of being sick and tired. In the Bible, there's a time that kind of reminds me of where we are. 3 brothers, friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They came across one who would call himself King Nebuchadnezzar, who had the audacity to boast that not only did he rule Babylon, but he ruled heaven too. So he made him an image, set it up. He even gave instructions that the band should play, and when the music started, everyone should bow. But these 3 Hebrews, when the music started, they didn't bow. Those who should have been bowing saw them not bowing, reported them, and they were brought in charge for insurrection, civil disobedience. They were part of the cabinet, part of the hierarchy. I believe the king was more embarrassed than anything else, prideful, that his own cabinet wouldn't bow. So he heated the furnace 7 times hotter than it should be. But when he attempted to put them in, it didn't work out that way. Trying to tell our community, it's hot. And things are as desperate as they've ever been. But something strange happens when you go in the fire for righteousness. God somehow always finds himself in your company. And I think it's time for the church to say, if I go, if I don't bow, if I can just stand. I think it's time for the community to say, if I just don't bow, if I just don't buy in, if I just stand, maybe God will show up with me. It was the king who said, did not we put 3 in? But lo, I see 4. And they're not bound, they're loose, and they're walking in the flames. And the 4th is like unto the Son of God. I heard us talk a lot tonight about strategies and what we need to do and being aware of things, but I want to remind us as people of faith, this is not a drill. And there were other people in bad places like we were. There were Paul and Silas who were thrown in jail, beaten and bloody and bruised. And just before 11:59 a.m., they decided to do something. They said, it's time to stop crying. So they did the opposite. They started singing and they started praying. I would like to suggest, as we vote, as we encourage loved ones to show up, to vote, as we look at the candidates up and down the tickets and the ballots, that we spend a little time talking to him, saying, God, you know all things. You know all people. Even say something like, I'm not smart enough to choose. Can you direct me and give me wisdom? It is in those moments when they sang and prayed that even their jealous who were responsible for keeping them heard them singing and praying. And one would take his life, but he found life because somebody stopped to sing and pray. I say vote, I say sing, but let us not forget to pray. Let us stand. Our heads are bowed. Eternal Father, Creator, Sovereign Lord of all, we are so grateful for your hand of mercy and wisdom being bestowed upon the works and service of Pastor Leslie Braxton, the New Beginnings family. These men and women, our servant leaders who turn aside tonight to hear us and to encourage us, to give us insight of things from an inside perspective. And tonight, Lord, they need you. Give them wisdom in the Senate, in the House, as they lead organizations, as we try to lead congregations. Help us. And tonight, Lord, we, as always, are mindful to do as you taught us. Forgive us our debts and our trespasses, as we forgive those who've trespassed against us. And tonight, let a fire be kindled in us for righteousness. Let us not miss this moment that you are up to something so marvelous and so amazing, for we know you do your best work in the dark. You always show up. So tonight, as we yield ourselves to instructions and information, give us wisdom to use it. Give us voices of influence and courage, for it is you who will be praised now and always. These things are declared in your name. Amen. And good night. God bless you.